Sagittarius, have you ever asked yourself, why do you carry a strength in your heart that others can't seem to understand? Why is it that the deeper you love, the more you find yourself hurting? Why is it that the more honestly you live, the more you're pushed away? Sagittarius, a door is opening. A secret long buried is about to come to light, and it has everything to do with you. Someone who once left you is about to realize the light you carry was exactly what they needed most. And when that moment arrives, your entire inner world will begin to change color. But before that truth appears, there's something you need to hear. Something that perhaps no one has ever had the courage to tell you. There are people who come into this world with empty hands, but inside their hearts, they carry fire. Not a fire meant to destroy, but one that's meant to illuminate. A strength not made of power or fame, but made of the rare ability to keep your compassion even when the world gives you every reason to give up on it. And you, Sagittarius, are one of those souls. I don't know if anyone has ever told you this before, but there are sacred gifts we carry that we spend half a lifetime trying to understand. Have you ever felt that? That from a very young age you were different. Not in a loud way, but in a quiet, deeply felt way that no one could explain. You felt things more deeply than most. You asked questions about the world, about yourself, before others even learned how to wonder. While others were busy playing, you were already whispering to your own heart. Why am I here? What does this all mean? And those questions didn't make you stand out. They made you lonely. You grew up in a world that wasn't built for souls like yours. They called you too sensitive, too idealistic, too much of a dreamer. They told you should get more realistic. But you know what? Here's the truth. You weren't born to fit into reality. You were born to expand it. The universe didn't send you here to live like everyone else. You were sent here to awaken what others have forgotten for far too long. But you didn't know that when you were a child. All you knew was that you never truly belonged. You stood among crowds, but felt like you came from another planet. You tried to love. You tried to blend in. But no matter what you did, you always felt like the one lost in the middle of your own story. And maybe, just maybe, you've asked yourself, why would God give me a heart like this, only to let it break? I used to ask that too. I used to envy the carefree ones, the ones who could love and then forget. The ones who weren't torn between what's right and what's real, between love and truth. Because the strength we carry, Sagittarius, it isn't in our muscles. It's in our faith. Faith in what is right. Faith that we can change something. Faith that if someone sees the truth, they won't want to keep living in the lie. But life doesn't operate that simply. People aren't always ready for the light. They fear it. And when you are the one who carries the light, you become the mirror of everything they are running from. They turn away from you, not because you're wrong, but because you're too real. And truth is often the last thing anyone wants to face. For a long time, you thought you were the problem, that if you were just a little less intense, a little less sincere, a little less believing in the good, maybe life would be easier. But Sagittarius, you cannot be anyone other than who you are. You were born with an ancient soul, one that has died and returned over and over again. You carry a fierce intuition, mysterious dreams, sensations that make no logical sense, but always prove true. You see what others cannot see. You feel what others try hard to ignore. And sometimes, that makes you feel like a warning, not a blessing. But here's what you've never known. You are the answer to someone's silent prayer. Someone you've never even met. A soul out there, lost, just like you once were. They need to hear your story to find their own. So please, don't extinguish your light. Don't abandon your heart, even if it has bled. Don't shut down your intuition, even if it once led you to goodbye, because those were not mistakes. They were sacred lessons, written just for you. You don't need to fully understand this gift right now, because it was never meant to be understood all at once. It was meant to grow with you, through every crack, every missed moment, every word no one ever said, but somehow you still felt. And maybe, just maybe, in the very moment when you felt you had lost everything, that's when the gift first began to shine. So before you turn away too weary to go on, ask your heart this. Do I truly want a life that is easy or one that is meaningful? If you're still here, still listening, then the universe is whispering to you now. Someone will come back, looking for you. Someone will suddenly remember you, not because they need you again, but because now they finally understand who you really were. And when that moment comes, remember, this is not the end. It's the very first moment you'll realize. You were never lost. You were only hidden. Until the time came to be revealed, in your full brilliance. There is a kind of loneliness no one teaches you how to face. A silence that doesn't come from not having people around, but from not having anyone who truly sees who you really are. And that kind of loneliness is something light bringers must learn to live with. You didn't choose it. It came with the gift. A gift the world isn't quite ready to understand. And sometimes, because you see so much, you become the one no one really sees. Not because you're invisible, but because you're too deep for them to dare touch. You've tried to speak about what you sense. Those sudden intuitions that give you goosebumps. Those dreams that come back again and again as if someone somewhere is sending you messages. But the responses you get, confused glances, half-hearted nods, or worse, mocking laughter. They don't believe you. They tell you you overthink. You're too emotional. You're imagining things, so you pull back. You still love them, but you stop showing them the deepest parts of you. And little by little, you begin to live in two worlds. The one you show, strong, joyful, adaptable, and the one inside, quiet, vast, and filled with questions no one ever really answers. And perhaps the saddest thing is, even when you're surrounded by people, there are moments you feel like the entire universe has gone silent, and only you remain. You've sat in a crowded room, with laughter filling the air, and yet your heart felt hollow. You've received a "I miss you" message and still felt unseen, even while being loved. You've stood before the mirror and asked, does anyone actually see me? Or are they just looking at a version of me I created so they wouldn't leave? And now you see, those who are chosen aren't chosen because they're better, stronger, or more special. They're chosen because they can bear a depth of loneliness that most people never touch. They weren't born to be comforted. They were born to awaken. An awakening always walks hand in hand with quiet, because those still asleep will resist when you speak the name of what they aren't yet ready to face. Sagittarius, you've lost people. Not because you weren't enough, but because your light was too bright for places that still wanted to stay in the dark. You've been hurt, not because you were wrong, but because you told the truth. A truth they weren't ready to face. And sometimes you wonder, what if I had just stayed quiet? Pretended I didn't know? Would I have been able to keep them? But keeping someone at the cost of losing yourself, is that really love? I believe you already know the answer. You weren't born to please. You were born to be real. And being real sometimes comes at a high price. You will have to walk some roads alone. You will have to leave people you once thought would walk with you forever. You will have to begin again, not once, but many times. No one knows how many nights you cried. No one knows how many times you had to whisper to yourself, "It's okay. It'll be okay." And no one knows that in those very moments, you were being drawn closer to God, to the light that lives beyond all explanation. Because it is only in solitude that the chosen ones can hear the true voice of their soul. Maybe right now, you're going through a season where everyone thinks you're doing fine. You laugh, you work, you share positive things, but only you know, there's still a small, quiet room inside your heart that remains cold. But please, listen carefully to this. You're not wrong for feeling different. You're just one step ahead of the fears that others haven't faced yet. They're not ready to understand you, but you don't need their understanding to keep living your truth. You don't need a crowd. You just need one true connection. And sometimes, that person is you. Remember this. Those who carry light must first walk through darkness, so they know what they are carrying. And that light, it doesn't need validation. It simply is. If you've ever known that kind of loneliness, leave a single dot in the comments. Just one. To let us know we're not alone. Because sometimes, all it takes is someone saying, "Me too," to soothe the ache of all those years you thought you were the only one carrying that kind of silence. And if you're tired right now, if you're asking yourself, how much longer do I have to be strong? The answer is this. Until you realize you're not just strong, you are awakening. Because the loneliness of the chosen is not abandonment. It is the sacred silence before the soul finally hears its true calling. Not everyone fears evil. Some people fear the light. Because when light appears, it doesn't only reveal beauty, it exposes what's been hidden. And you, Sagittarius, you are that light. Not the blinding kind that demands applause, but the steady, unwavering flame that makes people see themselves, even when they don't want to. And that's why they fear you. They fear how you're loved without flattery. They fear the honesty in your eyes, because it reminds them of the lies they live in. They fear how you forgive without needing repayment. They fear how you leave without resentment. They call you too strong. But that they don't know, you learned to rise from places where no one came to lift you. You rebuilt your heart not once but many times, with shaking hands. They see the result, but they don't know the process. And what they'll never understand is how you still remain gentle, even after the world was cruel to you. Some fear you because you speak aloud what they only dare to think in silence. Some fear you because you don't need them, but still choose to love them. And that kind of power confuses them, because you don't try to control anyone, but your freedom makes them feel threatened. Because here's the truth. When you no longer need others to be happy, you become dangerous to those who once controlled you through lack. Dear Sagittarius, how many times have you stepped back just so others could feel safe? How many times have you pretended to be weaker just so they wouldn't feel overshadowed by your light? How many times have you traded yourself away just to keep a relationship, to preserve a love, to secure a place among people who never truly saw you? And then there came a day when you couldn't pretend anymore. You walked away, quietly, no tears, no screaming, but they will remember. They will remember your presence when everything in their life starts to feel a little more dull. Because you weren't someone who came to add color. You came to bring clarity, to show what is real and what is not. And that made you the mirror they couldn't bear to look into. Maybe they once envied you, talked behind your back, tried to bury you, but that's okay, because you never needed their approval. You only needed one thing, to not lose yourself. And you didn't. In a world where everyone is trying to become someone else, you stayed true to who you are. And that is something even your loudest critics could never do. Now you understand, the strength you carry, some admire it, some walk away from it, and some will never understand it. But that's no longer your concern, because you weren't born to be understood. You were born to become fully, unapologetically yourself. If you've made it here and you see yourself in every word, if you've ever been judged for being too honest, too clear, too different, leave a comment, just one sentence. I was feared because I lived my truth. It's more than a confession. It's a signal, a way for lightbringers to find one another in a world that often misunderstands them. And you know what? When people like you find each other, that light is no longer alone. There will come a time even the strongest person will grow tired. Even those who always inspire others will feel so empty they forget why they're even here. And you, Sagittarius, even with all your light, have had a moment like that. A moment when your heart just wanted to shut down. No more healing, no more trying to understand anyone. Maybe you still carry that moment inside you. That night, a winter night, you had just walked away from someone you gave your entire soul to. They left with no real explanation. Everything you did for them, every sacrifice you never spoke about, was treated as something owed. Worse, it was denied altogether. You walked into the same familiar room. A soft golden light fell through the curtain, casting your shadow long against the cold floor. Outside, the wind slipped gently through the window grills. Everything felt still, as if the world had paused, except your heart, which was screaming in silence. You leaned back against the door you had just closed and broke down, as if everything you'd been holding together suddenly collapsed all at once. There was no one there, no message, no arms around you, just you. And a pain with no name. You thought to yourself, if only I could feel less. If only I didn't believe in goodness so much. If only I hadn't been so real. And in that moment, had the wind blown just a little stronger, you might have fallen completely. But then, right in the moment you thought you were falling with nothing left to catch you, something small happened. Outside the window, a stray cat jumped onto the sill. It looked at you, not afraid, not flinching. It just sat there. You looked back, and in that quiet moment you felt you weren't entirely alone. No words were spoken, no dramatic miracle, just the gaze of a tiny creature present with you in a darkness no one else could see. And in that moment, you understood. God doesn't always speak in storms or lightning. Sometimes, He whispers through the smallest things, a glance, a breeze, a song that starts playing just when your heart needs it most. From that day on, you still carried pain, but you no longer carried despair, because you had heard the gentle whisper of life, that you were still seen, that you were still held, that you still had a reason to go on. And so you began to walk a little slower, not because you were weak, but because you were learning to listen to the quiet sounds you used to miss. Now, whenever your heart feels tired, you no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, you whisper, "What is this here to teach me?" And you begin to see the light is still there, not as fireworks, but like a coal glowing beneath ash. One breath, and it can rise again. If you've ever had a moment like that, a moment when you were ready to give up, but something small pulled you back, share your story below, because maybe your story is exactly what someone else needs to stand in the middle of their own darkest night. Sometimes, a glance, a word, a quiet presence at the right time is how God saves someone without saying a single word. If you've ever had a moment like that, just write one single sentence, because maybe your story will be the light that saves someone out there. Regret is rarely loud. It creeps in quietly, slowly, persistently. In the silent moments, when there's no one left around to hear. And there are some regrets that never get spoken out loud. They won't text you back, they won't call, they won't say, "I wish I had been mature enough to understand you," or "I know I hurt you, and I'm truly sorry." They won't say it, but they will regret it. And that regret will follow them for the rest of their life. They will regret laughing at your dreams, not listening, even though you were always the one who listened to them. Taking your love for granted when you gave it with your whole heart. Staying silent when all you needed was a simple explanation, a little acknowledgement, or just a hug. They will regret choosing the easy path instead of choosing you. Choosing temporary emotions and abandoning the one person who stayed, even when they didn't deserve to be loved. And then, on those quiet nights, when there's no one left to play the hero, when patched-up relationships can't fill the emptiness inside, they'll think of you, not as an ex, but as the one who walked into their life carrying real light. And that light, they didn't have the courage to hold. But they won't say it, because to say it, they would have to face themselves. They'd have to look into their own past, at the selfishness, the immaturity, the fear of growing up. They'd have to admit the person they hurt the most was the one who loved them the most. And not everyone has the courage to admit that. But you, Sagittarius, you may never hear that apology, but you'll feel it. You'll see them go silent when they unexpectedly run into you. You'll see how quickly they glance and then look away. You'll feel the awkwardness in their eyes, standing in front of the light they once let slip away. And you'll know, they know, and you won't need that recognition anymore. Because you kept going, not with a closed heart, but with a soul that grows more radiant by the day. You've learned to love yourself, not as a replacement, but as a rebirth. You don't blame them anymore. You no longer need them to return. But deep down, you know, if there's one thing they wish they could redo, it would be to keep you a little longer. Because you are not someone easily found again once lost. You are someone who comes once with your whole heart. And when you walk away, you never return the same. They will regret not realizing that sooner. And maybe somewhere in your life right now, there's someone who is just starting to understand your true worth, but it's too late. Not enough time, not enough space, not enough of you left to offer them what once was. Because you didn't stay still, you moved forward. You turned that pain into depth, into kindness, into awareness. You transformed what almost broke you into the very thing that helped you reach the deepest parts of yourself. And that is what they will regret most. Not losing someone who loved them, but losing the chance to become a better version of themselves because of the love you gave them. So Sagittarius, before you force yourself to forgive too quickly, before you try to erase the past as if it never hurt, pause and ask, Is it really necessary to erase the pain when it was the very thing that helped you see the light inside yourself? And you, the one hearing this now, have you ever been left without a word? Have you ever been misunderstood just for being honest? Have you ever loved with all your heart, only to receive cold silence in return? If so, write just one sentence beneath this video. I was once the one they regretted, but they never said a word. This isn't about reliving the pain. This is about showing the universe. You are no longer a victim. You are a witness to awakening. And you, yes you, are living proof that no pain is ever wasted. As long as you choose to move forward instead of closing your heart. You've walked with us through the entire journey of discovering the strength within Sagittarius. A journey not about stars in the sky, but about the true light within your heart. We began with the sacred gift God placed inside you, a fire within, bright but solitary. A gift that made you different. A gift that made you see the world through eyes no one else understood. And live with a soul no one ever taught you how to carry. We passed through the deep loneliness of the chosen ones, not because you were weak, but because you could see things others weren't ready to face. You've been judged. You've been misunderstood. You've had to quietly hide the most honest parts of yourself just to survive in a world that favors the easy over the true. We touched the strength within you, the kind that makes others afraid, not because you ever hurt them, but because you dared to live honestly, to love unconditionally, to walk away without needing to prove anything. That strength didn't lie in your words, it lived in your presence. And then, we entered that moment when you almost gave up, when there was nothing left to hold on to, when everything you believed in had fallen apart. But right then, something small whispered to you, you were never alone, and that light was still there. And finally, we stood together before the things they will regret, but never say out loud. Not to blame, but to remind you, you were never wrong. You just lived too truthfully, too beautifully, in a time when people hadn't grown enough to understand that. And if you've stayed quietly with me all the way until now, then please remember, you weren't sent into this world to be loved easily. You were sent here to do the one thing few others are brave enough to do, to live truthfully. Living truthfully is not easy, but you were sent here to do exactly that. So, if something you heard today touched something deep inside you, if you felt seen, understood, even if just once, then don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment, share how you feel. Let your light touch the light in someone else. And if you believe that someone out there might be struggling the way you once did, send them this video. Because sometimes a single sentence spoken at the right moment can keep a soul from disappearing. You never know. But you, yes you, might be the very whisper from God meant for someone else. And with just one click, one shared message, you become part of that miracle. Right now,